I've always believed that everyone has a story and that everyone's story has value. I'm Joanna Pena-Bickley, the host of Designed By, a new Designed By Us documentary series that recognizes the changemakers, imagineers, and inventors in STEAMed science, technology, engineering, arts, math, and design. As I have traveled the globe and collaborated with some of the world's leading scientists, artists, and mathematicians, I know that daring to design the future today all begins with a vision and a narrative of a hopeful future. I invite you to join us on a journey of discovery, finding the voices and magic makers, changing the very shape of our future. I couldn't be more excited to introduce you to my friend and muse of many of my inventions and ideas, believe that one or not, to the one and only Faith Popcorn. Faith is a futurist, a best-selling author of The Evolution and the Popcorn Report, and a CEO, and in my opinion, a designer of destinies. Faith, welcome to Designed By.
Oh, thank you so much for that gorgeous introduction. I never thought of myself as a designer of destinies. I'll have to put that in my title.
For the longest time, I have used aspects of futurism to maybe not necessarily predict, because I'm not really great at predicting futures. I like to chart a road to the future that we want to get to. But I think one of the things that after we met, I walked away, my heart pumping, going, oh, wow, I found someone who does what I do and has taken it to such another level of being right a lot. One of the things that I think that you suffer from is being right a lot,
Yeah.
And I think a little bit about it from a place of, you in the 80s predicted cocooning, and here we are.
Yeah.
Right? Here we are in 2020 in a full-on cocoon.
Yes. 1982, we said that people would start to, stay home more and kind of hide under the bed more and look for comfort. And we called Martha Stewart at that time the queen of cocooning. It's her favorite trend. And we watched it as it morphed. You see, trends, like we have 17 original trends or truths, you could call them, that haven't really changed, but they have morphed. So cocooning morphed into the moving cocoon, which was like the minivan. It's, spurred a lot of new products. It morphed into the armored cocoon, which were defense systems, the edited cocoon, the filtered cocoon, and then the complete cocoon. And in our recent work for Comcast, we talked a lot about, home education and all of this we have been writing about, home medicine, we've been writing about for years. But I call myself the original marketing masochist because we are believe me, many reporters have checked this out to make sure I wasn't over exaggerating or just exaggerating, but we have been right 95% of the time in what we said was going to happen. And we have been believed 20% of the time, I would say. And, that gets a little tiring after a while. And it hasn't really changed that much.
It really hasn't. It becomes really interesting that we live amongst so many skeptics.
Well, you know what? You know this, of course, people hate change. And if they didn't think of it themselves, they don't believe it. And there are not that many people like Elon Musk, who understands that, while Rome is burning, planet is burning, he's going to do planet jumping. That's what he's all about. And he's all about understanding. He wants to understand what people are thinking, which is a little terrifying because I think he's on his way to that. And there aren't many. We call ourselves applied futurists, meaning, look, I'm cool at a cocktail party because what's going to happen, and then you can engage people for hours, right? But Elon Musk and we do applied futurism. What's going to happen and what does it mean to a specific, in our case, company, brand, strategy? And he does, what does it mean? What can I build? So Yeah.
So, instead of just talking about the future, I always think about that there are always indicators that began in the past. And I would love to understand, and I'm sure that my audience would, which is a basic question. Where did Faith Popcorn come from?
Oh, I came from the future.
I know you did.
I was born in the East Village. I'm a sixth generation New Yorker. When I was about one, my father had gone to Shanghai in the army as the head of the it's called the Criminal Investigation Division, CID, which later became the CIA of Shanghai. And my mother took me to China when I was like one, and to join him. And then we returned when the communists came in around 6 years later, after a quick trip around the world back to the East Village. That was some swirling trip. I mean, I'm 100% Jewish, but I was raised in a convent, a Sacred Heart convent, because my parents thought it was, the security was better there. So I went to school every day, and was, taught by the nuns. I got an excellent education, which definitely fell away when I got back. So I was a Jew at a Christian school. I was a Caucasian amongst Chinese, and my father worked for the CIA. So that's kind of a twirly childhood, to say the least. And that's where I came from. I was born Plotkin, and I was never that comfortable with that name. It felt too heavy. And then when I was 21, I got my first job in an advertising agency, and my boss, who was Italian, his name was Gino Constantino Garlanda, very Italian art director. He said, "What is this Plotkin?" "Oh, popcorn. Let's just call you that." That's how simple that story is. And then I thought, that does sound better. Okay. And I changed my name to Popcorn. And some people say, "Oh, you must have done deep studies and name analysis." And I did nothing but follow like my boyfriend in a way. He was my boyfriend too, of course, and became a popcorn.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So nothing deeper than it just stuck.
Well, yeah, it's memorable. It's poppy. As a matter of fact, all my kids in my life call me Poppy, like the flower.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was the right name for me. So my daughter, though, I adopted two Chinese children, and you can see why. I thought I was Chinese, and that, I guess, stuck somewhere in my subconscious. And my elder daughter, her name is Gigi. She said that she wanted to change her name back to Plotkin. I go, "Oh no, really?" So she didn't get around to it, but she was like, trying that out. So I thought that was kind of interesting. The circle just keeps going around and around.
It does. And I always think about it this way. What really is in a name? We are so much more than the names that we come from, but often it's actually the name that takes you to the next place. So talk to me. It seems like you started your career on Madison Avenue. How did you, we talk about evolutions, but what was the Faith Popcorn evolution from Madison Avenue to where you are today?
Well, my parents were both lawyers. My mother was a lawyer in the 30s, 40s. I guess she graduated law school. Yeah. And she was a negligence lawyer, which is another then called ambulance chasers. And my father was a criminal lawyer. He was like a jailhouse lawyer. And of course, they both went to NYU Law School, and they were determined that I would become a lawyer. But my father, I would have probably, because I adored and worshiped my father. But my father died in a mysterious car crash when I was, 19. So I jumped off that lawyer thing, and I took an advertising course at Visual Arts because my boyfriend at the time, Alan Kupchik, was an art director, and he was at Gray Advertising. And so I took this course, And the woman that was giving the course said, would you ever want a job as a copywriter? Because I think you're kind of good. And I said, sure, yeah. Because I had watched Breakfast at Tiffany's a few too many times. And I thought, oh, very cool. Like, I'll be in advertising, and I'll be like Doris Day. And I wore big hats and what do you call it? Like organza coats over linen dresses, and had a long cigarette holder. And, I got into advertising that way, and told my mother I was not going to be going to law school, which she wasn't absolutely thrilled about. So, I worked out of my, I worked in a couple of agencies. I got a little bit disillusioned because I didn't think they were serving their clients properly, because they were just trying to get them to buy television commercials and advertising for the present. And I was always thinking they should think, further down the line, what's going to happen and how the product would evolve and what people would be wanting. I was always very curious about what's next. And eventually I made myself unemployable. I was asked the most obnoxious questions in big meetings. And I started my own company, and it was called, BrainReserve, which was a reserve of brains, which was the first really cartel of like futurists. I gathered 10 of them that I knew, and we would brainstorm together and get, small pieces of business. But I didn't get a piece of business really for years, maybe 10 years. I was one of those people that went out to dinner with anybody I could find. And, I didn't really have any money. And eventually, maybe it was my name. I was working out of my studio apartment. I was paying with credit card debt. And eventually, somebody interviewed me from the New York Times, mainly because they were curious about my name. They said, I said, well, what would you like to know? And I prepared a lot of thinking about if I had any clients, what I would advise them, because I didn't have any. Mm-hmm. And really, they were there to think about my name and why I chose this name. And I told them a fanciful story, which I was sure they would never print, which was that my grandfather came from Italy and his name was Corne. And when he came to immigration, they said, what is your name, sir? And he said, my name is Papa Corne, because he was older than me. And I said to them, this is a true story. I said I shortened it to popcorn. And that's how I got my name. And they printed it. Maybe that's why they've never printed anything else I ever said. But they didn't do their research very well, right?
Clearly not.
That's what I said. So...
Today's episode is sponsored in part by Design by Us. DesignByUs.org is a civic media and public service design cooperative on a mission to create equal and equitable representation in science, technology, engineering, the arts, math, and design. We call that STEAMed. All you have to do is go to your phone or computer and type in designbyus.org and explore how public works and productions educate, equip underrepresented communities with a hands-on STEAMed experience they need to prosper in the global job market. So let's help Design by Us advance inclusive, equitable, and a prosperous future for over 10 million women, girls, and underrepresented communities with a donation. Take a moment and visit designbyus.org/donate. That's designbyus.org/donate.
Maybe I got that from my father. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that part of it is the argumentative nature of what it means to be the child of a lawyer. I understand completely because I am the child of a lawyer. We have that in common.
Right. Was there a lot of arguing at the dinner table and stuff?
Debate. It was very rarely. We never looked at it as arguing. It was always like a factual debate. And it made me a greater. I think always made me a great debater. And what I found was when I have left New York, or at least my dinner table. I was not born in New York. I was born in Texas. But when I left, and why I enjoyed New York so much is because it is a community of debaters,
Right.
right? And we debate everything. And
Yeah.
I think it's also something just sometimes part and parcel to growing up at a Jewish table too, because it is in our DNA to debate.
Yeah. It's Talmudic.
Yes, it is.
I mean, the questions that we ask, I'm always asking, like, how do you know? And what do you know? And where did you get it? And what do you think? But, although this is like focused on where it came from, the way I predict is where people are going. And I go to the far future, like 10 years down, and I do a backcast to the present. So you can figure out what's going to be 10 years down easily.
Mm-hmm.
But the timeline between now and the 10 years is what makes success or failure when you're consulting with a Fortune, 200.
Mm-hmm.
So we backcast to the present, and then we try to draw a timeline and say, is it going faster or slower? Machines will take over people, faster, slower, which machines, will there be people serving in fast food, places? No, there won't. Which ones will go first? Stuff will come to you, again, cocooning. It's just the timeline that makes our advisory, to say, you see, they measured me about how accurate I am, totally accurate. Timeline is a little bit more difficult. And also getting a company to believe, what you're saying is very difficult. Like I remember 10 years ago, we were consulting for Campbell's Soup, and Doug Conan is my just bestie. I love him. He was the chairman. And we said, Doug, goodness is coming. People are going to look at companies and want to see how, if they're good and if they're behaving well, and you're the good company. And I'm shortening a 100-page deck, but, simply said, you are good, and you should talk about goodness in your food, goodness in the way you behave, goodness in you, Doug, and how you talk to your people and everything. Anyway, his people said, well, suppose something bad happens, a typical corporate response, right? And we said, we will deal with that. We were going to do soup kitchens across the country, using fresh ingredients, et cetera. And then, unfortunately, Doug got in an awful automobile accident from which he never came really back. And that thing died. But there's an example of absolutely correct, absolutely right positioning and application and implementation, and still so much resistance. And this is it, like Kodak. My God, we got fired from Kodak, consulting with Kodak, and we got this big assignment, big for us. And what's the future of film? And at the end of 10 months and everything, all the interviews and brainstorming and every kind of machination and meetings and everything, we said, the future of film is digital. And they said, we did not ask you that. We asked you what the future of film is. I go, well, it's digital. And they said, will you stop saying that? It's what about film? I go, digital, And then they said, would you excuse us? So they left the room, and then they came back and they said, we have no use for talking to you any longer. Just like the big meat companies, when I'd say, like a Tyson, I'd say Future's vegetarian, and they go, or vegan, or lab grown chickens and beef. And the animal cruelty part and the processing part was coming, and this is a while back. And they, say, like, are you going to keep talking that way?
Are you going to keep saying the truth?
Are you going to keep talking that way? He says, like I'm saying, you're going to ask me later what my favorite curse word is, but it's not like I'm coming to the conversation going, fuck. I'm saying, vegan. That's all. But to them, it was as bad as. And truth to power, truth to not power, just like the truth the way we see it. And that I've told so many, plant-based. Now it's finally here. Are people adapting it? Not really. Mm-hmm. Look at the big food companies. Are they? Not really. Is it I think it'll be like absorbed, it like taken in by the masses, more faster than by the masses, faster than by the people with their master's degrees, their MBAs. I think people are realizing planet can't support it. It's mean if you've ever seen anything killed, and I think I went that way because my kids went that way primarily. And I saw a film in France once about how it was like a protest and they held up screens. One screen was how chickens are processed. One screen was how cows are processed. And, every other kind of little animal form. And I thought, and things don't happen to me that way, or most people go, well, that's it. I'm not eating that again. It wasn't hard.
Right.
Maybe someday I'll go back to it when they grow it in a lab and it's really not an animal, it's just cells. That would be okay.
It's interesting that you say you were influenced by your children. I too was. I have, both millennial and Gen Z kiddos, and they realize what they're inheriting, and it's interesting. So many of the predictions that you made 10, 15 years ago, you could start to see coming amidst this generation, about how very upset they are.
Yes.
And have the right to be.
Did they turn you off meat and stuff?
Yeah, they absolutely have. And, so I have, gradually, they were the first to jump into it. And so because we were feeding them, healthier alternatives, and while they're not completely vegetarian is where they're at, and they eat fish.
I eat fish too, but I went fishing recently, about a year ago or something, and I saw they catch these fish and they slam them over the head. That's cool. Yeah. So I don't know. In the scope of things. Is it the most horrible problem we have? No, we're burning the planet up and we're, starting to bomb each other again. This is really bad.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, but to your fish point, we're overfishing. Where we look at the problems in our oceans, and it all has a cyclical part and it is connected. So I want us to go back into the idea that one of the things in some of the stories that you've told us today, you've come up with some really bold predictions, right? And they're always baked. You have come up with some bold predictions, and they have always been backed by data, right? You're not necessarily reading the tea leaves per se, because when I have read any of the BrainReserve reports, what they're doing is looking at the signals, right? And those signals come in different forms of data, and the kind of the bold influencers who are trying things. And so, here you are, you formulate this company, it's called the BrainReserve. It's a cartel of futurists. The early days obviously were super hard, and effectively you are coming in and sharing not just what the future of, maybe that industry might be going through, but often hard truths. Where did you find the courage to walk into, a boardroom and tell them the future of film is digital? Or, one of my favorites is you just talked about, which is a meatless future to the poultry industry.
Poultry and beef. And yeah. I don't know if I never thought of myself. Would you say courage or
courage? Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a pretty courageous thing to be able to feel like you have confidence.
I don't have a lot of confidence. think I'm not that confident, and I'm not that, what do you call it? Like sure of myself or whatever. But I am sure of what I'm saying. And as I said, I'm oppositional. It doesn't bother me to walk into a room and go, you think X, well, guess what is Y, and let me prove it. And I can prove it circumstantially. That's what my father taught me and my mother taught me about circumstantial evidence. You can prove something circumstantially if somebody is at all interested in believing it. So when we're done with the deck, somebody will, present like a final after a year's work. They might say, as one client said recently, oh, that's so apocalyptic. And then 3 months later, COVID hit, and they go like, how did you know? I didn't know. That was just what I was thinking was going to happen. Actually, I thought it was going to be a little slower. My timeline was off because I didn't think COVID compressed it. And then all of a sudden, I was brilliant, but not, really. It was just what I was seeing. Like the Cassandra, the story of Cassandra. Am I right? What, Apollo got mad at her and took her eyesight away because she didn't sleep with him. Oh, it's so typical. And then she always told the truth, truth. She was the blind truth teller. And I think that I'm not as successful. You asked me later about the McKinseys, and I'm not maybe as successful as I could have been, certainly not as rich as I could have been, and not as, embraced as I could have been. But I called it the way I saw it. And historically, I've been right. The past doesn't prove the future, certainly, but I'm usually right. It's just always amazing to me that nobody else can see this. We told P&G in 82, 83, don't worry about Walmart so much because everything's going to be home delivered. Nobody's going to want to go to the filthy supermarket. And then we talk to supermarket people and they go, well, isn't that how women socialize in the supermarket? And you're like, really? No. And we're still here.
Please tell me that was wait. Please tell me that was a male who said that BS.
Oh, definitely a male. Definitely
Isn't that where we go to socialize?
And I will tell you, they still think that. They still think that women love to go to the supermarket.
Ugh.
Nobody. I mean, I actually love to go to the supermarket because I find it very relaxing, and I love to buy. I'm the queen of backup. I love to buy backup. I'm the only person who's had soda go bad because it's so old because I bought so much of it. Like, that's hard to do.
That is hard to do.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So, you've talked a little bit about, what it has taken, years to build this BrainReserve. Today, it went from, sounds like 10 futurists. How many futurists are in?
10,000. We have as many as it's a loose consortium. We have teams. We get assignments that have guardrails, like one of my least favorite expressions. They have you have to tell us what is, where is food going, or where is beverage going, and what does it mean to us, or where is, this fast food company going, and what does it mean to us? So we do have that, but part of our DNA and our IP is two things: a 17 lens trend bank, but a truth bank, where if you had an Oculus and you could look through all 17 lenses, you would see the future in detail. And then on the other side, we have 10,000 futurists, and we pick out, let's say, 6 or 8 on an assignment, and we wrap them around the assignment, go like, what do you see? And the futurists in my case here are not the dreamers, they're the makers. So it allows us to be early. So like gene editing, we were talking to gene editors, not genes that you wear, but, the kind, DNA genes. In 19, maybe 80s, early 90s, they were tinkering around with genes, and people would say, oh, isn't that that's so scary, and that can't be true, and it's going to be illegal. It could be illegal here, not yet, but that doesn't stop the rest of the world. And I was so scared because it sounded Aryan. Isn't everybody going to want a blonde, gorgeous, thin, tall, German-looking child? Uh, you know,
No, you certainly, I remember, in the 80s where, when it really began and they were just tampering with sheep, right? It was
right.
the cloning of
Dolly.
sheep, right?
Yeah.
And but if you step back for a second and you say, okay, gene editing, and then you look at, oh, wait a minute, the genes of a virus. And so it's
Right.
interesting to be able to see that it's very easy to imagine a dark future, sometimes, because I think that often we focus on the dystopian, and don't look at the reality or the practical of how might that technology be applied in a pandemic.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And like getting rid of cancer or
Right.
we just think of it as blue eyes and blonde hair.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, gene editing. So that's why we're so early calling that. I mean, we took a bet in a way that these scientists would actually crack the code, CRISPR and all. And they did. We could have been wrong, but not everything was dependent on it. It was going to eventually be right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you're coming up with, I always look at it like a version of the future. One of the things I love about your trend bank, it reminds me so much of, something that MIT has done for years, which is called 12 Tomorrows. They write comics based on, like future based comics. Sometimes they're a little dark, sometimes they're utopian, but the vast majority of them try to predict where technology is going.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about, what it means to write those futures, to write the destinies, to draft what may be a version of the future.
Well, you know, our decks are made to speak in the language of the Fortune 200, which is usually a constrained logical path to where we want to take them. Our conversations before we, deliver are a little wilder, and we see so clearly robotic companions. And, I don't know if you heard about this book called Clara and the Sun. It's by, I'm going to think of his name, Tashi. Let me look it up because it'll drive me crazy. Uh, he wrote Never Let Me Go. Did you ever see that?
No,
Did
I
you
did
ever
not.
read that book?
No,
Oh, that's an incredible book. He won a
I'll
Nobel
get put
Prize.
on my list.
Okay. Yeah, his name is Kazu Ishiguro. He wrote The Remains of the Day. Remember that
Of
about the butler?
course, yes.
He wrote Never Let Me Go, which was about a boarding school where actually they were growing clones, but they were like young kids and they were growing them for body parts. But these kids had consciousness
Mm-hmm.
and what happened there. And then this Clara is about a young girl who gets a AF, and you're going to hear a lot more about AFs, artificial friend.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it deals with a lot of things. I mean, this becomes this teenager's really bestie. Everybody's going to want one of these. They're intelligent, they're sensitive, they get you, they know you, they help you, and it's going to be quite common. Now, it does have its for the artificial friend, like it's a book about obsolescence too,
Mm-hmm.
because these robots become obsolete, and if they have consciousness, how much does that hurt, right? So he just wrote this book. It just came out. I really believe in that. I believe that man and machine singularity has crossed. That happened already,
Mm-hmm.
and we're in the middle of an evolution into a time where humans and machines won't be that easy to tell apart,
Mm-hmm.
and there'll be like enhanced forms of humanity which people may want to be,
Right.
and then there'll be supported forms of humanity, like like the basic income principle, which we'll have to support, the new kind of welfare because they won't be enhanced. It's going to have a lot of ethical issues, but so do we.
Right.
But it's definitely the way it's going. So when people say, like, are the people, how come stores are closing, or how come, people don't want to interact with people? They just want the stuff. Just give me the stuff. Stop talking to me. Right? That is the beginning, the need that then companies call those, which I just hate. That's my second least favorite term, need states. See, that almost sounds like robotic, right?
Yeah.
So what are the need states there? So the need states is, I don't want to talk to anybody. So the first thing was the cash machine, which everybody thought was going to fail, and it didn't.
Right.
Nobody liked tellers, really. And then now it's nobody likes supermarkets. I don't want to talk to the checkout person and just give me what I need and give me what I need for the diet I'm on, and then show me maybe what's new, but I don't have to go there. And by the way, people get shot at Walmart, and, I don't want to be in that parking lot. And now with COVID, maybe I don't want to be anywhere. And it was just, even without COVID, rolling on. It was happening. So I have the pleasure or the displeasure of seeing it. I can see it very, very clearly. I think other people see it, but I think I accept it. I think other people fight it. I totally accept it.
I think it's a really interesting premise to think about it as being able to, see it, accept it, and then one of the things and then apply it, right? That it becomes more of an applied science, because to the idea that the future isn't a matter of chance, that it's a matter of choice, right? Therein lies the application.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. The application is really important, but you have to believe the premise to go with the application. Like, I remember consulting with McDonald's a very long time ago, and we said, there's nothing for females. It's not great food. You're going to have to make it better. We said nobody wants to find cash in their pocket. You're going to have to take credit cards. There's going to be license plate recognition. What about delivery, home delivery? And they said, oh, it doesn't taste as good. And we said, make it in the truck. And they go, oh, that's so hard. We can't. And then with Kentucky Fried Chicken, we said we didn't want to change the initials, KFC.
Right.
So we did Kentucky Fresh Chicken. Kept the initials, which was cool. But then we had to get all those franchisees to put broilers in their thing and pay for them. And that took 3 years. Just that little thing.
Yeah.
That's why sometimes it's nice to have a dictator that goes, just put the goddamn broilers in there, because people are not going to want to eat fried, or some people.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you've had a remarkable journey. Right. You've built a company, you've written books, you are you have the ear of CEOs of the Fortune 200. In that journey, what is some of the things that you've been most proud of?
Well, I don't know. I was the first, maybe, Fortune sweetly called me that's the only sweet thing they ever said about me. But the Nostradamus of marketing, the original Futurist, that was good. I was able to bring my friends along, and a crew of really unemployable people who we could work with, and we codified a whole new way of working. I developed really an original expert network of futurists. I don't think anybody had done that. We would go, one of our futurists, I remember, he was a naturalist, and he was getting medicine out of the forest, and, we worked with him. We talked to pharmaceutical companies. We also have supported artists and spiritual gurus and microbiologists, and, they always have a friend in us. We always listen and interested and try to connect them if they need money. So I guess that's in my work. That's what I'm most proud of. The thing I'm most proud of in my life is my children. and my friends. I have really fab friends. So,
on that journey and, amidst all of, I think, the ups and downs of what it means to build a company and to build a, group of, as you said, incredibly unemployable people, but have become a cartel of futurists that have the ear of big CEOs. When you look back on it, what were some of the sacrifices and trade-offs that you had to create to get some of these ideas out and to build a company?
Well, people didn't understand our work or want to understand it. They thought I was sitting in a phone booth somewhere with a crystal ball and a martini. I did always have a martini, but not a crystal ball. And, I had to fight very hard to show them that the methodology was right. Also, my personal life was really crap. You don't have time for a personal life if a chairman calls you 7:00 in the morning on a Sunday, especially if you're a female. Mm-hmm. I worked 7 days a week. I never took vacations. I did it the old-fashioned way, I guess. And I don't like vacations very much. So for me, that was like not a sacrifice, but a good excuse. And, it was just like work, work, work. It's like but I love to work. Mm-hmm. It's not work. It's observation of the culture and the future. You call that work? Every movie you go to, every book you're reading, every person you're talking to, it's all part of this, kind of Penelope or tapestry of what's going to happen. It's like, really cool. So if you look at it as a sacrifice, I don't know. I never belonged to any clubs. So I didn't miss not being in the boys club or the, corporate club or I wouldn't know what it's like to be in a club.
And that seems okay by you, right? It was like,
Well, yeah. I mean, now I think, what do they do in there? Like, what do they talk about? I'm kind of curious. Whatever they talk about when it comes out the other end, it's not that interesting, but I don't know. I think men are having a big struggle now. I think they're the most vulnerable of the species. I think that they're lost. I think some of them are like hanging on like crazy and trying to stay viable. I'm talking more impersonally,
Yeah.
Who are they now? What are they? I don't know.
Well, it's actually something you explored in the evolution. Right?
Yeah.
It was certainly something that as you looked at, let's put third wave feminism aside for a second. When you go back and you take a look at the evolution and the predictions of what we said was, the rise of women and the rise of but I think even more female characteristics and the acceptance of those female characteristics as leadership, which was a wonderful, kind of primer to the place that we're living now. But one of the things I think that also explored was potentially the backlash of what would happen in that space.
Yeah.
That I think that we're living through right now.
Definitely. 8 Truths of Evolution. So 20 years ago, I wrote a book that explained that men and women have a different language and think about things differently and use their peripheral vision more than men they bond with brands, they don't buy brands. And it's maybe one of the best, not best selling certainly, but best books I've ever written. And these 8 truths, you could lay them on any single product right now and see how many that product or that thing doesn't meet. Mm-hmm. Where's female snack food? Where's female banking? Where's the female credit card? Where's the respect for women? I'm almost thinking it's going backwards. Mm-hmm. So, So
it's an interesting thing because you say, where's the female credit card? And that one's that, within the financial services arena is where I think, it was certainly drawn to my attention when Apple got together with Goldman Sachs and released a new card, and men and women were applying in droves. Like,
Right.
who gets excited about the entry of a credit card
Yes,
is
it was
when Apple
pretty.
does it, right?
Yeah.
And but in that, the discovery, it was a new aha to the inequity that existed. And if I remember correctly, it was one of the Apple founders' wife who, he said, I'm unemployed and she makes more than me, and yet I get more credit for just being a male.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so here we are in 2020, 20.
Same. Let me tell you something. Nobody's going to hand it over.
Right.
It's going to have to be a revolution. I know we hoped it was an evolution and people would come to their senses, but it's the same thing. Jane Fraser, is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
So Jane Fraser just took over Citibank, just about. I think she just did. And I'm curious to see if there's going to be a difference. Banking is so male run, so male directed. And when women are making all the money in the world, more than men, more educated than men, more in everything. They can have a baby. They're interested in diversity. They work well in groups. And yet they are not on top of the heap, and they are not spoken to in the right way. Where is female finance? Let me just say, it is nowhere. And the Apple card is not female finance. It's just very well designed.
Yeah.
Card. Pretty.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. By no stretch of the imagination is it
No,
that.
then, just asking you, why? Why do you think? Why?
Right. I've always looked at it as that, the access to credit is about power. It is about growth. Companies that have access to credit grow, and they are able to invest in capital, both in the people and in the hard capital. And there is active discrimination amongst, in the banking community, not just of, minority women, but women of color.
Oh, and my God, that's even worse.
Right. So it is a method of keeping us from that power.
And why do you think, but do we, this Black thing is everything that anybody is going to want to be is Black.
Mm-hmm.
It's right now. It's starting now. Companies are waking up so slowly, that Black consumer, the male and female, different from each other and different from white. And there are not going to be any whites. We predicted that probably in the popcorn report in 1908. I mean, the whole country is going to be brown. So how come nobody's paying attention to this? Because they're hanging on to power, wouldn't you? I mean, would you want somebody in the boardroom that smells differently than you do, that looks differently, that cries? Just talking about women? No. Mm-hmm. You'd want, as a human animal, to just have people like yourselves in that boardroom, and who think like you, and act like you and laugh like you. I mean, in a way, Donald Trump, I can't even believe I'm saying those two words together, showed us, and just in case we didn't think so, what they're really thinking.
Mm-hmm.
He showed us. He said it out loud.
No, but absolutely. No, the interesting thing is that we talk about so much of where he lied about things, but in reality, he couldn't have been more truthful.
Yeah.
Right. And
he lied about the election. Just
absolutely. That's a Hitler-esque lie. I think we could both agree, given our backgrounds.
Yeah. But no, he didn't lie about how people felt about women.
That's right. And he didn't lie about how he felt about women either.
No. Oh, of course.
He showed us time and time again. And what's really interesting to me has been how people didn't believe him when he told them the first time.
They didn't?
You know what? I think when we remove ourselves outside of the bubble of New York,
Yeah.
At a time when, and I think you've touched on it, right? And you touched on it in your book, an evolution of what was happening, but that white males would become extinct. And it is a survival mechanism that they're
Right.
utilizing, that fear that is driving with them, that it is, the fear of extinction or irrelevance. The last thing
Right.
a man wants is irrelevance.
Yeah. Right.
Right. It is with that, that he played that tune, and it played really well, because he too, what was really interesting to me was, if you stepped outside of New York and you understood, you tried to understand where people were coming from. And one of the best books I think written on this pre-COVID was written by Paula Ramos, who is a journalist with ICE. And she details one of the things, like, how could you be a Hispanic for Trump? And, the answer to the male said, you know what? He comes from la calle. In Spanish, that means the street. He speaks like he's the street, that there's a street smarts, and that it was something attractive, that it was in opposition to the elitism, and really an opposite to so much, but it came down to this one thing, which is, you just like, wow, a mad marketing genius, that he was able to paint himself like that to those people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You and I both know, as New Yorkers, he ain't that.
No, he didn't come from the street. He came from a pretty rich family, but he's rough. And I'm convinced he has a learning disability, a processing order.
Yeah.
Or disorder, where he can put a sentence together. It's not his fault. It's not his education or his intelligence. He can't retrieve. He has a retrieval issue. I'm positive. So he knows like 12 words, and he uses them, and, over and over again. I think people also have a lot of self-hate, and especially those kind of people that follow him. Mm-hmm. And I think that he gives them approval. So he goes, it's okay to be like an idiot. It's okay to be prejudiced. It's okay to want to hit and be violent. He gives, and especially women. My God, how can any woman believe in him? But that's really self-hate.
Yeah, it really is.
No,
it is.
So I think he captured that. Organized.
So let's talk a little bit. Let's take a shift into, you've spent many, many years, which is really exciting. I think it's a testament to your truth, and it is a testament to you having the ability to be right a lot, and endure what it took for people to be able to look back 10, 15 years later and say, "Yo, my God, she was right." It takes a lot to endure that. In that journey, during that journey, along all the different machinations of what the BrainReserve was, and you personally, of how you have evolved, who are the people that sponsored your progress and success along the way?
Sponsored it financially, or?
I sponsored it financially, through social clout. How was it that, clearly you kicked open the doors, but once you're in there, you have to make sure that you stay in there and you get paid, because that is the way that I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. I think that there are a certain, handful of Fortune 500, 200 chairmen, or, up there people, innovation people, that really believed in our work and got us hired, but it was never easy. Mm-hmm. And some of my friends, like in the early days, if I'd run out of money, they, give me some money. And I mean, of course I paid it back, but my family, my sister always backed me. My kids have no idea what I do, so I can't count them in there. I don't know. I guess my friends, having fun helped me along. I'm a big, I love parties, and I just also, some recognition. I said, I guess if people are writing about me, maybe people are getting it, makes me feel better. Uh, so what's kept me going is we have one standard. And we tell people that in the beginning when they're just going to think of hiring us. And I was such a lousy student. I was like a C- student. I don't even know how I got out of college. But we do A+ work. And when we write down what we're going to do, we exceed it. And it doesn't have to be A+. I mean, it has to be A+ in our eyes, but it has to be A+ in that client's eyes. And we're always asking, is this A+ to you? All along we're a pain in the butt. Like, is this A+? Is this A+ thinking? Are you like, really proud of it too? And a lot of like, it's wonderful. Some of these young people, like when they think about their career, they think, wow, the work we did together was phenomenal. And it lasted and it held and, making them very proud of it. So it's beyond getting hired for, money. It's having an ethic of really answering the questions, really doing good work, really being right, really putting the extra time if we didn't bid it out properly, which is usually the case because who can tell how much something is going to cost? I don't know. I guess that and people, like fearlessness. I try not to be, I've toned down in how I deliver. Uh, I just think it gets absorbed better. And I can't think of anything else.
Cool. When you look at things today, what inspires you?
Well, the water. I live on a pond on the weekends, a country little place. I love water, the ocean, and my good friends inspire me. A great book inspires me. I watched the Billie Holiday thing last night. That is so sad. U.S. versus Billie Holiday.
Brilliant, right? Just
Yeah,
sad, but
but still the same.
yeah.
They targeted this young woman, black,
Yeah.
who was so talented, and one guy and his pals decide they are going to destroy her because she's singing about lynching. Gee whiz, she died at 44 years old. And at the end, they said there was a lynching law in 37, I think, that came up before the Senate, an anti-lynching law, I should say, and it didn't pass. And it's still not passed. Came up again in 2020. That's kind of crazy. But anyway, that kind of thing. I don't know if when I get angry, I get inspired. That is like a spark for me. I get like, what? This cannot happen.
Yeah, no,
I'm sure you
I
can
actually
relate
have
to
been there. I can absolutely relate to it. I look at the injustices, things, and it gives you a moment to step back and understand. We got a lot of work to do, and
Yeah.
if we want to give the world, give a better world to our children, we've got to figure this stuff out.
We're not going to figure it out. Nobody figures this kind of thing out. We're just like going to have a revolution. It's got to be forced on people. They are not going to figure it out. It's not to their benefit.
Yeah.
So you don't figure out things that are going to end your life and your career. If you're a Fortune 200 company, you don't figure out the competition that's going to destroy you. You just try to keep going as long as you possibly can and say people don't really need good food and they don't mind cans and they don't mind that the lining of, some like, like packages like give you cancer or stop sperm production or trying to end the evolution of the human race through some of these chemicals. What are they going to figure out?
Right. Sure.
So,
what are the books you're reading today?
well, let's see. I have such a stack of books. It's so overwhelming. I told you I was reading that Clara in the Sun, and I'm reading that book about Charles Blow's book about taking over the South, that the blacks are going to go back in and take the South over. I'm reading about Black Futurism. Um, I'm also, writing an album. I was on this talk show in South Africa, virtual, and they ask you that question they ask on talk shows: what's the one thing you always wanted to do that you never did? And there was a whole panel, and I said, I've always wanted to write a rock song. And this woman was on the panel, and she says, oh, she was like the most famous pop star in South Africa. Her name is Corinne Zoid, Zoid. And she said, I'll show you how to write a rock song. I go, really? So we got together virtually, and actually we're almost done. We're writing an album, and it's an album about the future. And that's been inspirational because it's using a different part of my brain, music and lyrics. I like lyrics. So, and she's a very good lyricist. So that's been inspiring. And I don't know, like I read everything I can get my hands on. I'm reading a catalog right now that nobody's ever heard of, I'm sure.
A catalog? I mean, like catalogs. Really? Like a printed catalog?
A catalog in paper.
Oh, look at that.
I have it right here. It's called Uline. And it has all janitorial products in it. And I'm mad for this catalog. So the best like disposable things and the best like rubber carpets and the best picnic tables and the best, I don't know. Some of it's a little too much for me, but.
You're taking hyper hygiene to a new level, my friend.
I'm taking what?
Hyper hygiene to a new level.
Maybe. Best stickies and the best tape and the best everything. I didn't say I buy everything in it, but right. I don't know. Why do I find it so relaxing? I bought this little wheel thing. It's great to, because to move things around.
Absolutely. I could see that.
Anyway, I love that. And then, so you were going to say about...
No, so, this is where we got a little bit more rapid fire questions, which is, around the, you talked a little bit about who your favorite authors are, which is really exciting. What about your favorite artists?
Well, I love, Basquiat came from my neighborhood. I love Basquiat. I love outsider art. I love cartoon art. I love tattoo art. I love the Japanese, manga. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love Issey Miyake. I call him an artist. I used to wear Comme des Garçons, which is Rei Kawakubo. As a matter of fact, I have a new dog. I have a Japanese chin. I've always had Japanese chins. I named them after these designers. Like this dog's named Ray. And I had Tokyo. I had after who did I have? Just name them after designers, Japanese designers. And I used to love Comme des Garçons until somebody told me, why do you dress up like a bag lady? But I don't know. I just did. And of course, it was somebody from Palm Beach that said that. So, yeah.
Gotcha. So as we go into the rapid fire, talk to me about what is your favorite word?
My favorite word, the word I'm using most is robotic. My favorite word is hope, love, belief, all those, kind of corny words. Children. When I hear the word children, that's my favorite word. When I hear the word little children, tots, toddlers, sippy cups, those are my favorite.
What's your least favorite word?
Oh, I have a list. It is what it is. Oh my God. No, it isn't. I say every time people say that. What a give up thing,
Yeah, it is.
It is what it is, or got it. Got what? I say, and people say, I gotcha, meaning, I don't mean to say you say that, but, just like people use it like randomly. I go, do you really think you've got me? I mean, do you think now I would say maybe you do get me, but you can say gotcha, but, so what turns me on is like the getting up in the morning and not being like, getting up in the morning, and go like, okay. Like, my uncle was, I think, one of the only Jews at Annapolis, and he would go get him, And I feel like that, like, get up and do it. Not every morning, but most. So, that. And yeah,
What turns you off?
no, the word. Or we're not doing that. Or we not ready for that. Or call me later in the year. Or people that talk to me for an hour but have no intention of ever embracing our work or hiring us. People that humor our work because they think it's the right thing to do. Hypocrisy. Oh, I'll tell you what turns me off the most, and I never thought about this before you asked, is cowardliness. Cowards. I try to understand, like, I know you have a mortgage to pay and all that, but people that are really cowards, and people that are hypocrites, and people that pin the blame on somebody else, like bullies and manipulators. And there's a lot of that in the Fortune 200, people taking the rap for somebody else's mistakes. I hate that.
So what sound or noise do you love or enjoy?
I love the sound of my Japanese chins. I don't know if you know what they look like, but they have like pushed in faces, like a screen door hit them in the face, like really pushed in, more than any dog you've ever seen. And at night they snore really loud. And I love the sound of snoring chins, called Japanese chins. I love that. They start snoring, and it just like puts you right to sleep yourself. So delicious.
What sound or noise do you abhor?
I hate the sound of vacuums. And it just drives me crazy. I think that comes from my childhood. Maybe somebody was always vacuuming. It's a horrible, horrible noise. Yeah.
What's your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
And if you could do anything else in the world, any profession, what would you like to attempt?
I want to be a private eye. I've always wanted to be a PI and like track down criminals. And, I never understood why they didn't recruit me for the CIA. But, when I got my father's Freedom of Information Act thing, you can request it. It was all redacted. So whatever he did, maybe that's why they don't recruit me. I thought I would be absolute perfect cover, being in the CIA. They do say to you, would you shoot somebody you didn't know? And you'd really have to trust, as they call themselves, the organization, to shoot somebody and not know why. That would be hard for me. But I'd love to be a private eye.
What profession would you just stay away from?
I'd hate to be an accountant or anything with little writing, little columns, spreadsheets, granular work. I'd hate to be a ditch digger, a mine, like being in the mines. I always feel lucky because I think I do very clean work. I'm not like have a big shovel and digging down. I think it feels like boutique not to have to do that kind of work.
You've always spent so much time sharing what the future would be for other people. But if you had the opportunity to go back 10 years and give yourself some advice, what would future Faith tell Faith?
Well, I'd say it's going to be all right, would be one thing. Get a business partner, one of those really uninteresting business people, and get married. I've never been married.
This I know.
Yeah. I forgot. I was like that t-shirt, oops, I forgot to have a baby. So like really late I adopted these kids. And then I'm saying, oops, I forgot to get married too. Shoot. It would be fun for a while. I don't know. I hate not having done something that's so, in a way, commonplace, but it could be nice. Although I don't know any, or I don't know very many, I should say, happily married people, but that's because they think they have to stay together forever or they don't let each other breathe. I think I know how to let somebody breathe. I hope. I think so.
I think so too. So, what motivates you at the end of a day?
Oh, well, I usually have a beer or have a martini. That's very motivating. If I have friends over, because I'm not a lone drinker, maybe I have more than that. You know, we have like cocktails. That motivates me and we chat. TV. I love TV. I watch TV all night. I know it's a bad habit, but I do.
So, you don't suffer from insomnia from TV, you just enjoy
No, it
taking it
puts me
in.
right to sleep.
um, if heaven exists, if there's this place that we call heaven, what would you like God or the deity, or what would you like to hear when you arrive?
I'd love to hear, now you can rest. I will take over the future.
Mm.
I will take over what's next. That would be nice.
That's beautiful.
I would say, like, so what's next, God? What's going to happen? Just take it easy. I have a Jewish God, so his Jewish accent. Take it easy. Have a, like, you know, have a potato pancake and I'll take over.
That sounds like my kind of God, too.
Yeah.
If there was one thing that you learned on this remarkable journey, of being a futurist, being a best-selling author, a mom, and a CEO, and a designer of destinies, what would that be?
You know, I hope this, I think you'll, like, in the long run, it didn't matter. Because not to say that I didn't work hard and contribute maybe and all along the way, but it didn't matter because we are really a dot. We're just a teeny dot. All that struggle, you know, just like I think I see myself finally in perspective of maybe the universe. Maybe nobody can, but as much as you can, all the worlds out there and the other suns and satellites and planets, and we're a dot. So, like, you know, don't, you know, take it easy, girl. Like, don't take yourself so seriously. And in a way, it's like it makes you feel like crap. And in a way, it makes you feel like wonderful because it's so relieving. Like,
Yeah, it is.
yeah.
It
And
is
then
absolutely a relief to feel like the burden of the world isn't sitting on your shoulders.
it's not, and you know, it's very narcissistic. And I know I'm probably as or more narcissistic than the next person, but to say it's all up to you, it's not up to, I've certainly learned it is not up to me. Things, like they say, shit happens, things happen. I've been very, very lucky in a couple of ways. The women in my family, my grandmother, my mother, they're all cowgirls. They were just like out there, crazy. My grandmother collected rents in 7 languages. You know, she was just, you know, nobody was going to talk, you know, bad to her. She was tough. And my mother, same. So, you know, I think that's where I got that. If you called it bravery, I called it just oppositional, like, you know. And then, you know, good things, amazingly good things have happened to me. First of all, finding this line of work. It really didn't exist. And I like kind of made it up. And I made it up because I hate when people yell at me because everybody was yelling in my childhood, yelling and screaming and everything. So I thought, gee, if I'm a futurist, they can't really yell at me, right? Well, I was wrong. They certainly can. they do yell at you, but not as intensively, like, really scream at you. So I was lucky to find the work, and I was lucky to get the inspiration from my bestie, who was a ghostwriter and writer on all my books. Her name is Liz Marigold, and she adopted a Chinese daughter. Called me up and she says, "We're going to China." I go, "We are?" She says, "Yes, my adoption papers have come through." I go, "You're adopting what?" She said, "I'm adopting a little Chinese." I was so mad at her that she didn't tell me. That's my bestie. But anyway, I did go with her, and I saw Sky Chi come out, the nurse's arms and the elevator come out, and I go like, "Oh my God, get me one." I was like, Devil Wears Prada. I said to my chief of staff, my chief of life, Kathleen Cantwell, a fabulous partner. I said, "I want a baby. Don't talk to me about it." Because I was terrified, that I'd be a horrible mother because my family's so screwed up, and just don't talk to me about it. Just fill out the stuff, whatever you have to do. So she comes back like months later and she goes, "Well, there's one thing I can't do." I go, "What is it?" That's how I used to talk to people before I had children. And she said, "I can't go down and do the fingerprints for you." I go, okay, I'll do that. And then they called me one day and they said, "Your daughter is, like your daughter's waiting." And I thought, "I cannot do this. I'm not going to do this." They said, "Okay, yeah. What's her birthday?" So they said April 15th. And that was the birthday of Liz's daughter. And I went, and it wasn't the birthday of every Chinese child, which of course I checked out, being healthily paranoid. I go, "It is April 15th. Okay, I'll be right there." And I said to Liz, "Guess where you're going back to?" And she came with me, and I got Georgica. And then Georgica, I told her, "You're my boutique daughter." I used to dress this kid amazing. I just adored her. I kissed her to death that, like, when I come near her now, she goes, "Don't kiss me," like, and then she said when she was like around 7, "I want a sister." Now that's what I said to my mother when I want a sister. And my mother didn't want to have another baby. I want a sister and I want a sister. And finally, I got my sister, who I was just cloned to. And then when Gigi said, "I want a sister," I went, "I told you, you're a boutique baby. Come on. We're not doing sisters." So she said, "I really want a sister, Mommy. I'm so lonely." I said, "Lonely? We have a party here every 4 minutes." She said, do you realize, 7 years old, most of these people you pay to come, you're paying these people. And that's not family, Mommy. I go, wow. I go, "Okay, you just got yourself a sister." That's a true story. It's true. It's not a story.
It's so remarkable how children see through the smoke and the mirrors and bullshit, the BS. Right? Yeah. And they pinpoint it and go,
I know.
Bam!
I paid all these people. They were employees. They were all to do with money and work, and maybe creativity, but it wasn't family. She wanted a family. And they are so close. And when the big one kicks, Cece is the little one, Gigi and Cece, the alphabet girls. Cece is named after my mother, Clara Cecil. And my big one, Gigi, is Georgica, named after my father, George. Okay, so when the big one kicks the little one out of her room, goes, "Get out of my room." And the little one goes, "You can't say that. You wanted me. I'm here because you wanted me. So I'm sitting right here." And I said, "Okay, you're right. Okay, fine." So that's the little family we have. And a wonderful Chinese lady that's been with me since Gigi was a tot. 22 years. So I have a Japanese dogs, which were originally Chinese, as my nanny says. So, I have a completely Asian family.
I was going to say, you've created a Pan-Asian, an Asian microclimate.
Yeah. I'm the only Caucasian here. And my kids told me I'm Chinese inside. So.
Well, given your history, that makes all the sense in the world. You've you've effectively recreated the best part of what you say your childhood was, which was being the only Caucasian in a
Chinese world.
In a Chinese world.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty remarkable thing. One of my last questions is you are the original. I have always said this, whether, I was at IBM or here at Amazon, I said, I love to go to the source. Because today, futurism, you've seen a rise in the desire for futurism. I've also seen a rise, particularly in the design world, around speculative. It has been calling speculative design. Now, you and I both know, as I've been practicing speculative design as calling, it was really about daring to design the future that you wanted to see today. Like at its core, when you're a maker, and for me, it was always not necessarily. Again, I would be looking for the signals, but actually creating a narrative. And I think one of the crafts that you have is not only just predicting the future, but I think so much of what you do is creating narratives that can be believed in, because narrative and innovation go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. So as the original, what would be advice to all of the aspiring speculative designers, futurists that what kind of advice might you give them?
Well, I mean, on so many different levels. Like one of the things about how to see ahead, as I said, is to look way ahead and then come back and then see what the development of the future will be. So I think that's one. And I think don't be afraid. Don't be afraid because you don't matter. It's another one. And cling to others. Like, I had some friends that would encourage me. One of my good friends, his name was Robert Kenmore, in the 1990, some publisher was really chasing me. I went on a trip to Israel. The editor was there. I go, how'd you get here? It was like one of those, bond trips. Mm-hmm. She was on this trip. She wanted me to write a book. And this friend of mine, Robert Kenmore, said, write it. I go, I don't want to write it. And he'd say, write it. It'll package you. And, I hate that word. It's horrible, but it did. It packaged my work. It made me come up with the trends that I thought were going to continue. It gave me a voice. He was so right. And Liz wrote it, really. I mean, she was working in the company at the time, so we thought it together, but she's a wonderful writer, and she had my voice. I used to say she had my voice more than my own voice. Mm. So she, we got it done. And, so I'd say write something, become a personality if you can, because that always puts a few extra points on your scorecard, get noted. I was an actor. I don't know. We didn't discuss that. I went to performing arts. I wanted to be an actress. Mm. And I did. I became one. No, I wanted to, my parents were not happy with that. And they made me go to college. I didn't want to go to college. So I studied acting. So be an actor. Make sure you can speak in public. I used to throw up before I spoke. I was so nervous. And I just did it till I got good at it. And I don't know. What am I missing? What would you tell someone? Have another drink. Have another drink. Yeah.
That's the best advice we could give.
Yeah, right.
This too shall pass, says the futurist.
Yeah, exactly.
And with that, Faith, thank you. Thank you for being an extraordinary role model for so many of us. And I spent time in marketing, but I've often said and believe that the work that you do actually goes to the heart of the way that a company operates, and has an opportunity to use those insights to transform or prepare themselves for the unknown. Because I fundamentally believe that the cost of not knowing is far more than the cost of getting it wrong.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The other thing, that's true, but they all think I'll be out of here. I'll retire before that happens. That's, But the other thing is show up. And these companies, they show up in court. They show up in jail, but they don't show up as part of the brand, most of them. And I think that people now want to see who's running that company, what they really believe. Not talking heads, not gorgeous, yeah, sure, gorgeous design and visuals, but I think they want to go to the heart of the company and know who's running that thing. And it's a promise between the head person and the consumer.
Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. I invite you to join us on the next episode as we discover the voices and magic makers changing the very shape of our future by design.